Hello everyone, and welcome to the Terrace bar, which is my favorite level visually. Not my favorite in terms of layout, because it's basically just a really big fucked up circle. It's a lot less places to hide, and it's a lot less complex than the other maps, and it's... Well, you can't say it's flat, because there's small inclines like this, but... You know, there's a lot less up and down. A lot less elevation. It's not a bad map by any means, and if I were to choose any particular map to replay just for fun, it would probably be this one just because I really like how it looks and it's very simple. But the other maps are most certainly more creatively designed. So there's actually not a whole lot to say about the level design here. There's like one place I'm aware of with gas canisters, and if you blow them up next to an enemy, the enemy takes massive damage or instantly dies. But, I don't know, this level doesn't have a lot to it, really. But this level being kind of plain, aside from visually, where I think it's quite nice, does give me adequate time to discuss the film upon which this game is based. Now, the film and the game have very little in common aside from the basic concept. But the film, like the video game, has a scathingly negative reception to the point you would think that it was just an awful, horrible, unsalvageable mess of a film, when it's actually a perfectly serviceable film with consistent characters that just happens to have an incredibly strange sense of humor. Most critics of the film seemed largely to be put off by how weird the characters and humor were, but that's kind of what I like about the film. I don't know, that it's definitely not unintentional that the characters are so weird. Here's the gas canisters. But, one of the reviewers accidentally wrote something that was supposed to make the film sound bad that I think makes it sound awesome. Let me try and get the quote here. A reviewer wrote, "The plot manages to be fully predictable and freakishly bonkers at the same time." And that's supposed to be like a negative, like something I don't like about it, but that just makes it sound awesome to me. And I mean, he's not wrong. You can see everything coming a mile away, but it's also really fucking weird at the same time. And I love it. It's great. Alright, there's a point in the movie where there's a guy that turns into a monster that starts speaking like Elvis, and they refer to him as Fat Elvis, and he starts running up buildings and shit. And I don't know, it's just fucking the best thing ever. It's the fucking best thing. But anyway, aside from the movie's really weird sense of humor, there is a lot to appreciate from a narrative and character development standpoint. I think a lot of people maybe missed or just didn't care about the development or behavior of the characters, which is kind of a shame. There are a lot of good things about emotional control, coping mechanisms, masculinity, accepting change, and mentally surviving a traumatic experience in that film. There's a lot. There's a lot of character development and important things the film's trying to talk about. One of the characters is an incredibly emotional man, whose only self-worth came from how his wife thought of him. He has difficulty coping with, like, you know, being dead, and difficulties accepting the current state of things, and he's serious all the time, has no off switch for serious, and he has no patience whatsoever. In contrast, the other lead character, the cowboy we're playing as right here, Roy, has had years to suppress the pain, and he copes with, like, a childish, carefree approach to most emotional trouble. He shitposts with his mouth a lot and makes inappropriate jokes all the time, does not know when to shut up, and his lack of regard for sensitivity has helped him achieve a state of peace in his own mind, even though he also experienced many traumatic things. The two characters eventually rub off on each other, and they become more carefree and sensitive in positive respects, and they leave most of their extreme negative attributes behind as they grow. There are also some really fun character quirks that are more subtle, like Roy being incredibly progressive. Like, he's definitely a feminist and also is very race-sensitive, in spite of being a very white cowboy man. It's just an interesting contrast, and it's a fun source of humor to have a character be progressive that you do not expect to be progressive. I haven't really seen any other media do that. Maybe that's because, like, they lack the opportunity. Or, like, if another piece of media does do it, it's usually, like, shoehorned in the most weird way possible. Sonic Boom. But the characters are a very strong point in R.I.P.D, and so is their development. But I think a lot of people probably either missed it or didn't care, simply because the characters behave kind of weird. Like, there's no doubt that Roy is a very strange man. But he's strange because that's how he copes with pain, is by shitposting all the time. He's just constantly making inappropriate jokes and mocking people and suggesting that they should emulate his peace by trying the same coping method that he does. Like, he's had a lot of shit to work through over his life, but he eventually got past it. And his coping methods weren't exactly wrong, but maybe not the most healthy just by themselves. And so having a more serious, sensitive, and emotional partner brought up some things that he hadn't thought about for a very long time, and disrupted his peace until eventually he found a better method to cope while also managing to be more sensitive. This isn't stuff that you have to look for. This is shit they say out loud. Like, it's not subtle in the slightest. They say this shit, like, directly out loud without any sense of subtlety or class. Or, I mean, so, like, you can't pretend it doesn't exist, because they just straight up fucking say it. And it's really good. There are at least 2 very good character interactions that define the film and the way the characters behave. And those 2 scenes, very important. There's a lot of smaller defining character elements, like how Roy talks about masculinity and how it helped him overcome his pain. And maybe that's not the most healthy way to cope with such things, which he learns after learning to be more sensitive, because his partner started rubbing off on him. I don't know, like, I get that it's like Men in Black, alright? That comparison's inevitable, but if we have to compare it to Men in Black, what character development is there in Men in Black? What is Will Smith's character? Describe it to me. What is his character besides sassy and has a strong sense of justice? Because Nick, Roy's partner, also has a strong sense of justice, but he has a lot more going on. He only finds worth through how his wife feels about him, and he cared for her more than anything, to the point that he was even willing to jeopardize the thing that gives him worth to make a better life for her. And he eventually learns to value himself, find worth within himself, instead of only getting worth from her. And is able to move on, allow her to move on, so she can survive him, find someone new, make a new family. Because he's dead. And he has to cope with that. What is Tommy Lee Jones' character, besides that guy that people really like to quote and post that one image of for reaction purposes all the time? I think Men in Black largely coasted on having a cool concept, if we're being completely honest. And when you look past the wow factor of how cool the concept is, it's just like there's not a lot of substance there. And when it does try to have substance, it's absolutely groan-inducing. Like that one line about a person being smart and people being stupid, that's just such surface-level psychoanalysis shit. And R.I.P.D is over here trying to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and how to cope with feelings of loss and inadequacy and masculinity and how it affects the way people view their emotions. Like, there's not even a comparison to me. It's just like R.I.P.D, if you're going to compare it with Men in Black, one of them is just better, and it's not the one everyone loves. Sorry. I think from a character development and narrative standpoint, R.I.P.D is most certainly a better movie than Men in Black. Maybe not from a production value standpoint, but, like, I'm not sure that's super important. If the weird humor really puts you off that much, alright, sure. But I think it being weird is part of the charm. And it's necessary for Roy to be weird because that's part of how he copes, is being a weirdo. Like, that's just part of how he deals with his pain.
That's it. Now hold off those deados while we arrest him. Or just execute him now.